Cool. So we'll go ahead and get started. So coaches, welcome to Coach's Table. So my name is Ryan Cox. You've probably seen my name on quite a few emails or through social media. Maybe you've never actually seen me in person. So Earl is out at a conference in Arizona, which some of you actually might be at as well. So I am stepping in today so you get the younger and better looking version from IRONMAN U today. I'm sure Earl's watching and laughing at me right now. So I want to welcome first our IMU Master Coach, Mark Allen, the 6-time Ironman champion himself, which, Mark, I have to give you credit for calling out Paula Newby earlier about her 8. And she said, I'll take your 6 and raise you 2. So that was a really cool share on Instagram that you had earlier today. So giving one of our other IMU certified, our master coaches, a little shout out there was awesome. So Mark, 6-time, come on, there we go. The Olympic distance world champion, ESPN's greatest endurance athlete of all time. I mean, you're in every single triathlon Hall of Fame possible. Everyone knows who Mark is. Our other one is Kate Wheeler. Kate is one of our IMU certified coaches. A little bit of info on her here. And Kate, I'm just going to kind of give you the floor first, kind of tell who you are, where you've been, and all that good stuff.
Sure, thanks. Hey y'all, so my name's Kate Wheeler. I'm currently in Fort Mill, South Carolina. It's right just south of Charlotte. I've done 5 full Ironmans. I started in 2010. I did 1 a year for 5 years. After that, I really decided to get into a little bit of coaching of triathletes. I also teach outdoor boot camps. And then I've got nutrition and personal training coaching that I do via online and in person as well.
Very cool. So Kate is super well-rounded, which I think is really cool that she brings a lot of knowledge outside of just triathlon with the strength and conditioning and nutrition, which I think is really cool to be super well-rounded like that. So I'm excited for today. We're going to go through a lot of training plans between Mark and Kate, and then even show it a little bit in Final Surge as well. So Mark and Kate, I'm going to open up the floor to you guys and let you guys run with it for now.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Kate, good to see you virtually here. And everybody else, welcome for coming. Welcome and thank you for coming. I hope you get some good information out of this particular webinar. We, excuse me, Kate and I actually had a few conversations, as you probably guessed, to kind of flesh out the concept of this particular one. And one of the things that I thought would be great is to have her describe to me how she puts together training plans, and then actually look at one of her Ironman distance training plans that she has up on Final Surge that athletes can go on, they can purchase, they can be guided by it, and she'll help them out. And then I went through and looked at the plan, made some suggestions, and then she made a second plan based on some of those suggestions that I made. So basically what this is really hopefully going to provide for all of you is just kind of the thought process, not only of how I think when I put together training plans, but then also how Kate is thinking when she puts together training plans, because as Ryan said, she has a really broad base of background as far as, not only endurance training, but strength training, which is a real emphasis for her. And then also, a real specialty in nutrition, which, as you all know, Dave Scott rinses cottage cheese. So it set the stage for nutrition to be a big part of Ironman racing, triathlon racing. So anyway, again, we're going to just kind of dial in and look at an Ironman distance plan. That's kind of like, I know as a coach, and probably many of you know that a lot of the athletes that you will be coaching are going to be people targeting a full Ironman distance race, just because, there's a lot more that goes into it. There's a bigger risk if you have a bad day. And so they really want to get some good guidance. And so hopefully out of this, you'll get some tips on, maybe how you can actually tweak, modify your training plans so that they really help the athletes get healthy, get fit, get strong, do stuff that's sustainable, and then have an amazing experience at their races. So why don't we just turn it over to Kate, and maybe you can just give me the basic concepts of when you're thinking, I want to get somebody ready for an Ironman. How do I lay out that training program?
Sure, absolutely. So initially, I like to find out what their racing history has been, maybe what their current training looks like, just so I have an idea of where they're coming from. I also want to know what their work looks like. Is it very sedentary? Do they travel a lot? Is it high stress? What's going on at home for them? Do they have a spouse? Do they have kids? Just to kind of get an idea of what is going on in the background, so I know how much stress or what that training plan, kind of the baseline should look like. I also want to find out what their ideal schedule looks like. I have an athlete that can only get to the pool during the week. And then I've got one, who needs a specific day off during the week. So just trying to figure out what that looks like in terms of scheduling so I can best put their plan together. And then just really looking at what does their foundation need to look like based on their history. So laying that foundation initially. And then from there, building out whatever their goals are for that race. Do they have a specific time goal? Do they just want to finish? And then I know you mentioned that some of the key components that I really feel like are super important are that strength training and nutrition, not even just on race day, but their nutrition in general. And then training nutrition along with their race day plan. So that's kind of how I start, and figure out what that progression needs to look like from there.
And so when you're starting them out, obviously one of the key things is how do you bring them into a training program? How do you, let's say somebody, I know that the program we're going to look at is for somebody who already actually has a base of training of fitness. So maybe they just finished a 70.3 and now it's, the second part of the season or the second part of whatever it is, their progression to get ready for a full. So how do you think about those first key weeks of bringing somebody in? Because I know personally, especially if it's a new client, they're going to be looking at those first couple of weeks and going, is this working or not? Of course, it takes, it can take actually several months for your training philosophy to really come into its full force and form and get their fitness where it needs to be. But they're going to be looking at those first key weeks. So how do you like to start them out?
Sure. Great point. I usually will do some time trials in those initial few weeks just to see where their baseline is. And then I'll put in just some key sessions to try and bump that fitness up a little bit. Like you said, a lot of times they're looking for that, am I going to make a change? Am I really seeing this? It's like you said, when you're planning for that long term, it can be a while before you start noticing any gains, but I'll really do those time trials just so I know what their quick times look like, and then try and get some key sessions in, just so they can see that they're making a little bit of progress out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. And then are you the kind of coach that it's sort of sprinkling a little bit of fast stuff within each of the weeks, or do you do like a real strict base period and then go into speed work? Do you start with speed? How does that work in your philosophy?
I typically have sprinkled it in throughout.
Okay. Well, why don't we take a look at, I can share my screen because I have this up. Let's take a look at Kate's training plan so that you can kind of see how this looks. So this is a 30-week, 31-week?
Yeah, it's 31 weeks.
Yeah, so the plan that Kate put together, and again, this is basically a generic plan in the sense that people can just purchase it. So there's not necessarily specific zones or power suggestions. It's more based on a relationship to, let's say, a 5K effort or a 10K effort. To kind of give people that little bit of customization, but based on what their experience has been. So let's see. So. Let's see. Cool thing here. I don't know if many of you have worked with Final Surge yet, but when a coach puts together a workout, you can have descriptions. So the basic on the calendar, what somebody is seeing is the basic workout. A run workout. It's an hour, strength training 30 minutes, swimming 2,000 yards. But then you can put in a description of specifics for that workout. And so it's super informative for an athlete. You know, it's almost a disservice to an athlete if you just give them a workout and say, run 30 minutes or run an hour or bike 2 hours. You know, it's like, okay, what do I do within that? And so Kate's, as you can see here, let's say, you know, it's an hour bike ride, and she's having them do, you know, some 30-second pickups and minute and a half, you know, easy, and then some more pickups. And so as a coach, you can utilize this really well to just give each workout a specific focus. But what I'm interested in seeing here is kind of two things. You know, as if I am analyzing another coach and trying to figure out what they're doing, I want to see where they start them out, the kinds of workouts they're having them do each week in the beginning, and then also as they progress through the program, are the workouts building to the point where, you know, obviously it'll get them ready for the distance race that they're doing. So maybe instead of me leading into that, Kate, why don't you sort of describe what you have them doing in like these first couple of weeks here?
Sure. So as you can see, like I said, I've started them out with some time trials, just so I can get some baseline info on their running on that first workout, and then their swim the next day. And I gave them a couple days in between before I did the bike time trial down on the 28th there. So that way, if, I mean, again, like you said, this plan is generic. But if I was working with them as a coach, that would then allow me to then go in and program their specific time goals, or maybe it's heart rate goals based on those initial workouts. So that's kind of in that first week on this plan. And then from there, just gradually building up their distances. So their swims are getting a little bit longer. There's some technique work in there as well. And that one says some technical work. So I know that's a big thing for some folks. Usually swim is the weakest link for a lot of at least the folks that I've worked with. So sometimes we've got to provide videos on things as well when you're not have local athletes. But anyway, so that's kind of building up the swim, the distance there you can see, and the run. I think I started an 8 mile. There's a 10 mile in that next week. Bikes, we've gotten some hills in there, and then progressed to a little bit longer.
And as you can see, like in that 10-mile run, she has, you know, some specific things to just kind of think about, you know, going to 5K pace for part of it, and just kind of mixing it up. And again, these are the initial weeks, and then we kind of go through. You know, the bike is building a little bit here. Long run, 12 miles, continuing on. As we're moving through, and so you have some other workouts. What are those kind of? What's your thinking on those?
Trying to get some, like you can see, there was a 70.3 race that I had thrown in there. So this plan has some races mixed in as well, just to keep them engaged, get them. I like to just have like a practice run. So especially if, well, depending on what race it is for them, but even if they're just in a new season, but just making sure we're really dialing in on race day. So there's a race built into this one. So then just some recovery after that. I've got yoga built in, just for some extra stretching and trying to get them ready to go again. Then it's a while before I had them run again. It was like another week, I think, before I put in another run, just to let that body recover a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then as people, you can see here, she's also done something that I think is really a strength, and it's something that you can do when you're customizing training plans for people, is to mix up the number of workouts a week in each sport. So for example, this week, you know, there's 4 bike rides, obviously a bigger bike ride week, bike focus week, and then the next week there's only 3. And so she's allowing for some recovery. You know, the length of some of the workouts. How do you think about, you know, you have a 31-week plan here. How do you think about progressing up in volume or workout length, especially in the long workouts as you're getting somebody ready for an Ironman?
Yeah, and again, it'll depend on the athlete. Usually it's a 2 or 3 week build for me. A lot of times I'll do a 3-week build and then a 1-week recovery, just depends on the person. And then also trying to work off of like a 10% rule, especially with running or things where you can get a little bit, there's a higher risk for injury. So with total volume or like the length of the long workout for the week as well.
Yeah, so for those of you watching, you can see she's had the runs or the green workouts here. She's had 3 weeks of building, and then again back here now she has instead of 4 runs, she's knocked it back to 3, so that there's a little bit extra recovery on there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of we're kind of seeing the general theme of how Kate is progressing. 10% increase, 2 or 3 week build, and then a back off for recovery. Again, a lot of these workouts are having some specific things. So 70.3 pace for some of it on that bike ride. Let's say for the run here, just an easy run off the bike. We have where's that? A little bit longer run. Some parts of it are going to be faster than a 5K pace. So as you're seeing, a lot of these workouts do, as Kate mentioned, have some specific sort of faster bits in there, which is something that I'll address in a minute. But let's go to the end and look backwards, because that's also something that I like to do. Okay, where are we? So if we go all the way to the race, sorry folks, this is slow internet. This is not Final Surge. Okay, so she, 31 weeks is it's a big event, big race at the end. So what I like to do is to, you can see she has some taper, very short days leading into the race. But I like to look back from the race and see where the person is eventually progressed up to in their training. So to see kind of like where did this athlete get to as far as their long workouts, consistency of longer workouts. Is it enough? Is it too much? Is it too consistent? Is it not consistent enough? So, 2 weeks back from the race, long ride, 3.5 hours, 12-mile run. That's obviously tapering down, but let's go back a little bit further and see what she built them up to. So we can see she has a 5.5-hour bike ride here. Long run of an hour, but there's going to be some other runs that are a little bit longer.
Yeah, it was a 2.5-hour run.
Yeah, let's see, where is that?
I actually had it right after that bike.
Oh, did I miss it?
Yeah, on the 5th.
Okay, yeah, 2.5-hour run, which is for most athletes, whether they're going slow or they're going fast, 2.5 hours is it's a pretty good number. Going more than that often ends up causing more breakdown than people can absorb. Some coaches will have their athletes run up to 3 hours on their longest run, getting ready for an Ironman, and it's going to be very individual. Bike rides for sure, building up somebody up to going somewhere between 5 and 5.5 hours is a really good target to try and get the athlete to reach. Again, it's not so important the actual distance that they're going. It's more just getting their body used to moving for that period of time. And you can see she has a brick run after that. So this workout day on August 4th is actually a 6-hour day, which is it's a really good target to try and hit. And this is little side information. There's these physiological shifts that happen about every 3 hours as you're moving through workouts or moving through a race. So at about 3 hours, up to about 3 hours, you kind of feel one way. And then right around 3 hours, your body goes through this kind of shift of some sort where you kind of feel lousy. And then at 3:15 or 3:20, all of a sudden things bounce back again. And there's another shift that happens at 6 hours and another one at 9 hours. And it's these, if you take athletes up to those points and have them experience that shift, it helps them to transition through that quicker when they're actually in the race. So this is a great workout here. Swim, you know, she has some 3,500 yard swim, 4,000 yard swim, perfect for an Ironman. That's going to get them ready. So let's go backwards a little bit further. 4-hour bike ride on this week. Let's see. She had that 2.5-hour run. Tempo workout, 14-mile run up here. So again, she's mixing up also the days where she's putting stuff, which can kind of keep somebody's body guessing. You know, it's like, when is it going to happen? And obviously, it's going to depend on when the person can do these workouts. 4:15 bike. Going back a little, you know, 10-mile run. So a couple things that I'm seeing here. 10-mile run, 10-mile run. The long bikes have dropped back to 3 hours. So there was that 2.5-hour run, 5.5-hour bike, but I'm seeing, as we back up a little bit more, a lot of days that are 3.5 hours. You know, 62-mile bike, 10 to 12-mile runs. What I would like to do, you know, 4.5-hour bike up here. So here's a couple suggestions that I gave to Kate based on what I was seeing in this. And the first thing is the actual length of the training plan that you're giving somebody. So, you know, you can give people an 8-week plan to get them ready for an Ironman. You can give them a 50-week plan to get ready for an Ironman. Too short, obviously, they can't build enough fitness. If it's too long, then the phases of training actually start to get drawn out too much, and it's hard to vary the training enough through the different phases of training to actually keep their body responding with fitness gains. So, you know, human beings, their bodies get very adapted and efficient at whatever it is we give it to do every day. So in the beginning of the season, as we're in now, it's the very end of January, when people start back, and they have had an off season, their fitness is going to come really quickly, right? And so in that first couple of months, they're actually going to get like 80-85% of the fitness that they'll get throughout the entire year. But that last 15 or 20%, it takes another 6 months to get, because once the body starts to get efficient, then you really have to vary the training a fair amount, you know, longer, shorter, faster, slower, so to keep their fitness gains coming. So one suggestion that I would make, and that I made to Kate on this, is to kind of shorten the length of this program. 31 weeks is quite a long time to be focused specifically on one race and to have everything trying to progress to that race. And maybe shorten it to 20 weeks or 25 weeks or whatever feels right. The second thing is a consideration about, as you know, we've seen in a lot of the workouts, there are a lot of them throughout the week that have a certain anaerobic element to it. You know, you can see here, you've got a lot of stuff that's like 90% of your FTP or 90% of your max heart rate, or you know, things that are going to stimulate that anaerobic system. However, anaerobic is, as you all know, high stress on the body, and especially if you are coaching older athletes, they just can't absorb. They get the benefit out of anaerobic work, like let's say it's a 50 or 60-year-old man, woman, doesn't matter. They will get the biggest benefits out of anaerobic work in 4 to 6 weeks, let's say. But then after that, their bodies just have a harder time absorbing it. And if you keep continuing to have them do anaerobic training week after week after week, they can get stale, they can get burned out, they might get sick, they're actually going to get a little bit slower. A younger athlete, 20s or 30s, can benefit from anaerobic training for a much longer period of time. Maybe they can absorb 10 weeks or 12 weeks or 16 weeks of consistent work like Kate is having them do here. So one of the second suggestion that I made was for her to maybe dial back any kind of anaerobic work in that first 4 to 6 weeks of training, so that they really are just stimulating the aerobic fat burning physiology in their body through aerobic workouts, and then start to sprinkle back in the anaerobic work, which she has here, which is great. And then the final suggestion that I made was to maybe think about building up that length of long workouts a little bit sooner, so that they have a few more of those longer days in their body. They don't have to go longer, but just to have a little bit more consistency. So in this 31-week plan, it kind of looked like there was just a lot of time where it was 2 hour, 3 hour, 3.5 hour bike rides, 10, 12-mile runs, something like that. But to bump that up a little bit sooner so that they have a few more of those. And again, you don't want to go crazy with this, coaches. It's so easy to think, okay, they've got to do an Ironman, so week 3, I'm going to have them doing 5.5, 6 hour rides, and I'm going to do that for the next 16 weeks. Well, you might burn your athlete out. And as Kate's smiling, she as she said, she asks her athletes, what's your lifestyle? What can you do? What have you shown that you can absorb in the past? Have there been any pitfalls? Have you seen that, you can progress 2 weeks and then back off, or you can progress 3 weeks and back off? Which works for you? So how did all those suggestions sound when we spoke about them?
They made perfect sense. So everything, it made perfect sense.
Okay, so let's see if I can get rid of this one here. Oh, where'd we go? Where's my final surge? Hold on. Let me close out some of these tabs so I can move this around. There we go. Purchase plans. Where is it? Need to delete this.
Yeah, that would be at that 24-week
plan. Okay, so we're going to edit. We're going to take the way Final Search works is, coaches can share their training plans with other coaches, as and so I was able to I'm able to remove Kate's that plan and then put on a different one here. She revised it, made it a 24-week plan. So we're going to put that on the calendar. So let's go back to the calendar. And we'll scroll to the very beginning of it. Okay, so here we are. Kate took a lot of those suggestions, put them in. So instead of having a lot of these workouts have an anaerobic element to it, she kind of just dialed them back. And she's having people do gradual builds into the workout on that bike. Let's say long run here, pace that you can hold that's a little more steady. So you can see in this very first week, where initially there were a lot of sort of faster anaerobic stimulating sessions, she's dialed that all back, which I think is great. Second thing she did, as you saw, she changed it from a 31-week training plan to a 24-week training plan, which again, it helps you shorten the time between that start and end, so that there's a better chance that over the course of it, you can actually vary the type of training that you give and keep the fitness gains coming. You can think of it like you can only vary training so much, right? And so if you stretch it out, that curve becomes more of a lump. And if you shorten it up, it's going to be very jagged, the differences between the types of phases that you do. So 24 weeks, I think, is a great call on Kate's part as far as the distance or the length of the train plan. Again, we'll just take a look at a sample workout. You know, it's just she's having them ride at 75%, which is great. That's aerobic. Up to about 85% of max is going to be right at the top end of aerobic. So it's an aerobic bike. You know, another one over here. Got some hill work in there. You guys get the idea, right? Let's see, she's got a nice 8-mile run. Conversational pace again, you know, and these are not specific zones because this is a plan that somebody would just sort of buy off the shelf from Kate, but it's good enough and specific enough because conversational for somebody who's out of shape is going to be different than conversational pace for somebody who's in shape, but both are going to be basically aerobic. So that suggestion has been great. Let's scoot to the end and let's look backwards again. I kind of want to see what the long workouts progress up to and kind of the number of them that happened throughout these 24 weeks. So again, this scrolling is slow because of my internet and Zoom. When you're on Final Surge, I think you'll see that it's an amazing platform. I've been on it for a couple of years now. I do all my coaching through Final Surge. Okay, so where are we here?
Oh, it doesn't look like the race is loaded.
Okay, the race did not load. What's going on? Let me just refresh this and see. Yep. Got to go through the scroll again. And we'll be opening this up to questions also, but just want to kind of give you guys a good idea of how this got modified.
Yeah, Mark, you just beat me to it. I was just going to say, as you scroll, that I do have a few questions that have come in. I'll definitely get to those at the end. So keep those coming in, and I'll definitely make sure we get to those as we get to the end when Mark and Kate finish here.
You know, as you can see, it's May. The race is in July, right, Kate?
Yes.
So she's already got a 4,000 swim, 4.5 hour bike. You know, the run has progressed up quite nicely already, 16 miles. The next week she has a 5-hour bike in May, which she didn't even get to that, I don't think, until a couple of weeks later in the previous plan. So she's definitely building the athlete up a little bit quicker. You know, a lot of the endurance that an athlete needs for an Ironman is going to come from those longer bike rides, and so that's why there seems to be a lot of emphasis on the cycling portion of the training. Let's keep going down here, see how things look. You know, so there's another 5-hour bike ride right here, 2.5 hour run in June. Again, great progression, a little bit more volume a little bit earlier, which is just going to help build that physiological fitness, but then also on the run, which is something that Kate emphasizes the run. You know, the more running you do, the stronger the actual cell membranes in your legs get, so that when you're in the marathon, in an Ironman, it's more difficult for that impact and pounding to actually break down the muscle. And as you know, as muscle breaks down in an Ironman, that's what ends up activating that survival part of your brain that's telling you, slow down, this isn't good, you know, and you struggle and you got to overcome that. But as you're doing a little more consistent, longer running like that, it helps build the integrity of the leg muscle so that you get less breakdown in the race, which enables you to keep going faster for longer in the event. Again, some great progressions here. She has a 3-hour run up here, 4.5-hour bike, you know, perfect because she backed off the bike so that that long run could really build up. Just a little bit further down, you know, another 5.5-hour bike, drop the run back, long run back. And again, I'm sort of emphasizing bike and run, but she also has, she has some great swim workouts in here also that have, you know, 4,500-yard swim. Again, just pushing things a little bit beyond that distance that you'll do in the race so that when you do the swim in the race, you get to the end and it's like, oh, I'm done already. I mean, I did workouts that were longer than this in the pool. So you get out of the water fresher than if you'd just gone up to that swim distance in a workout, like 3,500 meters or whatever. Again, a lot more weeks with some decent longer bike rides, longer runs, super dialed in it. And I haven't, you know, another 5,000 swim here. I haven't emphasized the anaerobic part because she's really good at putting those types of sessions into each of the workouts as she gets into that phase of training. Let's see if we can find a couple of them for you, just so that you get a sense. That's another recovery one. You know, she's having the athlete run where you're descending down to 5K pace. And again, for an Ironman, you might be thinking, well, why do I need to go fast? Because it's slow in the race. Well, you have to develop that anaerobic system to have a complete package going into the race. And when your aerobic fibers fatigue in an Ironman, if you have worked your aerobic, when the aerobic fatigues, if you have worked your anaerobic fibers, your fast twitch, you can recruit those even at slow paces. So it's also important. And the anaerobic work is what raises VO2 max, as we all know is a good thing to do. So I hope that makes sense. Kate did a great job, I think, of modifying this. How does it look to you on compared to that first plan?
Yeah, it feels much better. And I know the one other thing you told me too, I don't know that you just mentioned it now, having the staggered, well, I guess you did touch on it. Like when you have a bigger bike week, the run was not as big that week, just to give the body a little bit of a break there as well. So that was something that I hadn't thought really of before. So this just felt like it was more fluid. There's more of a foundation, definitely more of a solid build, longer, more consistent. Yeah. Feels a whole lot better.
Okay. We have some questions there, Ryan?
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that was super helpful. So yeah, we definitely have quite a few questions coming in. So first one that we got asked kind of goes back to the beginning. So some of the days, not just brick workouts, but you'll see strength with like a swim workout or things like that. And we have a question that says, do you prefer a long rest between the first workout of the day and the second, or can we maximize time by going from the pool straight to the weights, for example?
Kate? You're on, Kate.
I like to maximize time. I'm all about that. So I also feel like that will help. Like I feel like sometimes you just need to work out tired because you're going to be tired in an Ironman, and your legs and your body need to know how to keep going when you're fatigued. And that will help too with fueling. Some of my newer athletes, they're starting to realize, you know, when I do 2 workouts right in a row, you know, I'm tanking on that second one because my fueling, not fueling. So it teaches them that also.
For sure. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I was like, I mean, with your schedule, it's easier just to go ahead and get both in as quick as you can. And then there's nothing wrong with being a little tired because that's definitely how that race is going to be. Next question comes from Dan. He goes, is there a way to import our training plans to Final Surge from Training Peaks, or with being in the Coaches Association, are there template plans available to load into Final Surge? As far as the second part of that question, I know just because you're part of the association allows you to be on Final Surge, we don't have any templates available from the association side. I'll let you guys answer as far as importing from Training Peaks to Final Surge.
I actually imported all my plans from Training Peaks. I hadn't used Final Surge until this all came about. I've only ever used Training Peaks. So it's super simple, and Tim's got a great, it's like a PDF. It just tells you exactly how to do it, and it's not hard at all.
Perfect. Question from John. He asks, are you guys using the workout builder? I don't know.
Kate?
Again, I imported this from Training Peaks, so I really didn't. And these plans, I did not use the workout builder.
Perfect. So in regards to speed work, especially when it comes to running, anaerobic running, what are you recommending for older athletes versus younger athletes as far as like specific to weeks?
Mark, I'm gonna let you take that one.
Well, as I said, the number of weeks of speed work that I give athletes is dependent on age. So younger folks, I give them more weeks in a row of speed work than I will an older person. The thing that's interesting is for older people, they actually get a much greater response in terms of mitochondrial stimulation and activation from speed work than a younger person. So an older athlete will get a bigger bump from speed work than a younger athlete. The younger athlete has to do more weeks of it to actually get the same kind of mitochondrial changes that help you generate power in the muscle from those little powerhouses. But the actual workouts themselves are going to be the same. Whether you're 20 or 60, the actual physical workout, it's going to be the same thing. 8 by 400 with half a lap jog or whatever it is. When I build my anaerobic workouts, I try to have the total amount of anaerobic time be somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. And the reason for this is that if somebody is doing more than about 20 minutes of really hard anaerobic work in a workout, their effort level is going to not be approaching that sort of max effort because it's just too long and sustained. However, one of the reasons you do anaerobic work is to get a bump in your VO2 max. So it's to try and increase your body's ability to get oxygen in quicker. And you do that as you approach your maximum heart rate. If you're well below that, you're going to get an anaerobic stimulation, but you're not going to get as big of a bump in overall fitness. And so if you have an athlete doing, let's say, an hour or 45 minutes of anaerobic work within a tempo or speed session, their effort level, yes, will be anaerobic, but they're going to be well below that sort of max output level. And so it's going to stress their body, but they're not going to get as big of a bump in fitness. And that's actually kind of the gray area of training that a lot of athletes work at. It's moderately anaerobic. So, they get that feeling like, I really did something. But in the end, they're just tiring their body out. They're not getting that increase in VO2 max that you're hoping to get from doing really high quality work. And I trained in Boulder for many years when I was racing, and I saw at the track who was doing what. And the people who were world champions, world record holders, the best runners in the world, they weren't there all day. They were doing, 5K, 7K worth of anaerobic work on the track. Those who were trying to get there were doing 10K, 15K worth of hard stuff on the track, and they were just burning their bodies out without getting that fitness gain. So I hope that answers the question in a long roundabout way.
No, it totally makes sense. I have a swimming background. The same thing could be said in swimming in college. That VO2 max was short and sweet. It's very quality, not quantity, when it comes to that. So next is specific to bike. It says when you're practicing to not bike over a specific time or a specific distance. For instance, if an athlete has enough time to do a long bike that will allow them for 100 plus miles, then is that done? Or do you recommend riding longer than that 112 so the athlete knows how that feels if it's in that specific time frame? Does that make sense?
It depends on the athlete for me, and I'll let Kate talk about this too, but if you can have an athlete, well, let me back up. In general, as a coach, what I try to do is to give people workouts that are going to take them beyond anything that they'll have to experience in the race. So for example, if it's a hilly race, I'll try to get them to incorporate hills in their training that are either longer than the hills that they'll need to, that they'll encounter during the race, or hills that are steeper than hills that they'll encounter in the race. So that when they're actually in the race, even though it's a hard and it's a race, part of them is going, oh, well, I did something that was longer than this and steeper than this. And it's the same with the distance, you know, especially swimming and cycling. If an athlete has the time and the fitness to do it, I try to have them do a couple workouts that are longer than race distance, so that when they're in the race, you know, if they've ridden, let's say 120 miles in training, when they get to 112, their body's like, really? I'm done? That's awesome. Let's go run a marathon. Obviously, you don't want to have your athletes out there running 30 miles to, you know, get ready for the marathon. But again, that endurance for the marathon, a lot of it is coming from what you gain through those long bike ride days. So I don't know how you would look at that question, Kate, but why don't you give it a...
I mean, I think I would answer it the same. If they have the time and they're able to, I know for a lot of folks, it's a confidence booster as well, especially if they've never done one before. If they don't have the time, then trying to just build in that, like, build more of their foundation throughout, you know, workouts built out throughout the week. But I think, like you said, if they have the time and the capacity to do it, and we're not going to risk injury, then yes, I think it's great to give that confidence boost that they know they can do it.
Perfect. Next question. I'm going to give to Kate first as your strength and conditioning background. So it says, in regards to strength training for your typical newer age group athlete, what do you recommend as far as minimum and maximum per week? They asked, for example, like 1 to 3. Is that what you would recommend, or what are your thoughts?
1 to 3, like workouts?
Yeah, I assume so. It just says 1 to 3. I think it's 1 to 3 workouts per week of strength training.
Again, it depends on the individual. If they're newer, I think like they're asking, I would say
newer age group.
Around 2 as an average. I normally don't go less than 2 unless, you know, we're getting closer to race day. But I really feel like there's such a strong component of just having those muscles, you know, be used to lifting those extra weights. I'll always just do a total body workout at least twice a week.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's exactly what I do. I have my athletes doing total body workout 2 days a week. If you're only doing 1 day a week, you tend to not have enough adaptation. So every time you do it, you're going to be a little sore. If you do 2 strength workouts a week, it seems like your body starts to adapt, and then you get into a rhythm of it, and you're not sore. You'll feel the fatigue from it, but you won't have the soreness. And then for most athletes, if they, again, it's lifestyle, it's time, it's everything else, 3 days a week seems to just push them over the edge. Like, along with swimming, cycling, and running, you have 3 strength workouts, they just aren't recovering. And, you know, then they start stressing out about time because they got to go to the gym, and it's twice a week.
2. Perfect. Question from Mark. Do you reduce volume as well as the number of workouts in recovery weeks?
I keep the number of workouts the same, but I definitely reduce the volume. Kate actually does it differently, and it's a really great way to do it. She'll cut back on the number of workouts in the week to give recovery. So like you can see here, well, I guess my screen's still sharing, right?
Yeah, you're good.
You know, so she has 4 bike rides, and then the next week she has 3. So it's just a way to super recover when you cut out that 1 extra workout, which is either way works. I think Kate's way is a super way to do it.
Perfect. Next question, talking about the workout builders and Final Surge as well. It says, does this allow uploading to Zwift or Trainer Road, etc.? I'm not sure. I don't know if Mark, I
don't think it does. You know, there's just some technical issues that didn't get resolved. They were trying to do that. Final Surge was trying to get it to so they could upload into Zwift, but at the moment, I don't think that's been worked out.
I think that's correct. As of now, it does not. Maybe in the future, but for right now, it does not. Next question from Ken. What do you consider older for an athlete?
Well, it depends on your perspective, son. For me, older is about 85 now. Excuse me. I'll let Kate answer this too, but it really does depend on what you're talking about. So you know, let's say you're talking about strength training. Any athlete who's over, you know, very early 30s, if they don't do strength training, their performance is going to suffer. Everybody will benefit from strength training, but once you hit your early 30s, you start to lose lean muscle mass if you don't do strength training. If you want to maintain your lean muscle mass you had in your 20s, you're going to have to do strength training. So that's one level. As far as looking at it from that anaerobic perspective, like when do I really have to be careful with my athletes? There's definitely seems to be a fall off after about 50, where you have to really start to make sure that the athletes are not overdoing it as far as too much speed work. And then there's definitely a fall off for the athletes when they hit like their mid to late 60s. People who have been longtime athletes, all of a sudden, you know, they're like, my running's slowing down. There's nothing I can do about it. What do I do? You know, so there's a few different places where sort of old starts to creep in. Kate?
The only thing I would say, piggyback off of that, my focus is would come more like along with running, just because again, there's more of a chance for injury. You know, joints aren't the same anymore, and then extra recovery time probably as well.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, and this is just kind of a question that came to me, as far as like the longevity of that athlete within Ironman racing, does that play a factor as well? So if it's an older athlete who's maybe been doing it for 2 or 3 years versus 15 years?
You know, longevity is, there's a couple factors. One is genetic. You know, some people are just put together and they can just keep going forever. Others, they can be struggling after just a little bit. But the real keys to longevity, and as a coach, I try to think longevity, like I don't know if my athletes are going to want to do this forever, but I train them as if they are somebody who will want to keep doing this as a lifestyle for many, many years to come. And so one of the keys is to, for sure, make sure you don't give them too much speed work and burn them out. Secondly, make sure they're not over racing. Make sure that they have a long enough off season where they let their fitness come down and drop so that their body can fully recover and recharge. And then throughout each season, as we're going through it, look for those signs that are saying, okay, they're getting faster, they're absorbing the training that I'm having them do, or they're starting to hit some speed bumps and, you know, they're starting to get sick or injured, or they don't have as many days where they feel good, they feel tired or exhausted, or the motivation's dropping. So, you know, longevity is basically stress management. If you're keeping your athletes in a good recovery throughout the course of the year, they're gonna, it doesn't matter if they're 20 or 30 or 40, 50, you know, they can keep going for a long, long time. And again, this balance is not moment to moment, it's over the course of a year. So you have your overreach periods in training where you are tiring your athlete out. That's the goal, that's the objective. Right. But then you bring them back and then you get them recovered. And then when they hit the race, then hopefully it's a great experience.
Sure. So it's always just a trajectory up, even if it's kind of slowly. Yeah. Next question, going back to Kate, kind of, and I think you kind of answered this with your strength question. It goes, how are you organizing your strength workouts?
Yeah, I try not to have a strength workout on the same day, maybe as a hard run. And I like to give them a few days in between, so that way it's maybe 4 days or 3 days in between, so spacing them out well, and then trying to pair them usually with a swim or a bike, or an easier run day.
Perfect. And got a couple more here. We're almost there. Can we discuss swim, bike, run brick sessions? How important are they for race prep, and when should it be best implemented?
Mark, I'll let you run with that one too.
Okay.
Mark, I'll let you start there.
Yeah, and you know, anytime you can have an athlete simulate something that they'll encounter in the race, have them do it in their training, it's going to benefit them. They don't have to do it all the time, you know, so some days in the week for sure do a swim workout and then follow it with a bike. Same with bike and run. Have them do a bike ride, follow it with a run, so that they get used to having that second sport be started a little bit fatigued. And again, Kate talked about this of, you know, get the workouts all done time management, get them done together so that you actually have that opportunity to practice good form, good technique, and have the experience of doing a sport not fresh. Because as you know, when you run, let's say a 5K or a 10K, that's a very different feel than when you're running a 5K, 10K at the end of a sprint or Olympic distance race. And the same with marathon running. People go, oh, I want to run a marathon so I can have a great marathon and an Ironman. I go, it's two different worlds. That marathon that you do it because you want to do the marathon, not because you want to run a faster marathon in an Ironman. Running a marathon in an Ironman is a very different animal. To come off the bike after 112 miles, after 2.4 mile swim, you're not fresh. You're probably going, how the heck am I going to run this thing? And so I do brick workouts. I make sure that people don't overdo them. So I'll have a couple weeks of bricks, like two weeks of brick workouts, bike run, and then the third week I won't have them do a brick, just so that they're not always fatigued. And then also do have workouts throughout the week where you have each sport be the first thing that you do, so that you do get used to just having that super fresh feel in swimming, in cycling, in running, and then, yeah.
Perfect. Kate, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I was going to add, he just touched on, I was just saying, like, prioritizing the workout. So if you're going to do a brick, like you said, just switch it around so that way you are getting some things fresh.
Perfect. So next one from John is, how far out from race do you plan a race simulation day?
Mark?
Kate, I'm gonna give it to you first. I'm gonna throw you under the bus here.
All
I'll give it
right.
to you first, and then go to Mark.
I think I've got mine planned like 4 to 5 weeks. Or maybe it's 4 to 6 weeks. I'm trying to think when I did mine. Right around that 5 week out mark, I think, is when I did mine. Maybe not.
For me, the only thing that's race simulation is doing a race. So I'll have, for an Ironman, I'll hopefully my athlete will have, let's say, a half Ironman somewhere between 6 and 10 weeks out from the Ironman, just so that they get that real race experience. And there's nothing like racing to get you ready for racing. And so it forces you to work with your nutrition. It forces you to make sure you have your transitions down. It forces you to get all of your race equipment together and make sure it works, and that you can actually utilize it in the race, so that when you get to your Ironman and if something doesn't work right, that's a big, you've invested a lot of time, money, energy, your family supported you, your friends have supported you. You want all these things to work right. And so race simulation for me is actually having my athletes do races.
Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. I feel like that almost gets overlooked sometimes, as having some sort of race built in there, and that is a run through before your final top race of the year. Mike kind of answered the Final Surge question himself. He said you can upload structured workouts from Final Surge to Trainer Road and Zwift if the structured workouts are built with percentage of FTP, not by zones. So there's a little stipulation there, but it is possible. But again, it has to be with percentage of FTP, not by zones. We have one more question here, and we'll try and keep it short, as it is right at 1 o'clock. It's a little bit of a longer one, so bear with me here. So assuming you have a solid plan with a responsible build, what's the shortest amount of time you'd recommend an intermediate athlete take between Ironmans? For instance, do you think someone can race a second full a month after their first full? What's the balance between them needing some time to recover, coast on the fitness they have built in the first one, and how easy do those in-between weeks become to allow some recovery? I know that was a lot. So I guess first off, what's the shortest amount of time you'd recommend an intermediate athlete take between Ironmans? Start there.
Well, I think it takes a full 3 weeks to really recover from an Ironman. The first week you're tired. The second week, by the end of the second week, you actually feel completely normal. But then at the end of the third week, you realize, oh, a week ago when I felt normal, it's because I was so depleted after the Ironman and I got up to here, that felt normal, but really normal's up to here. So I personally think it takes about 3 weeks to fully recover from an Ironman. And then if you're going to do any kind, you will have lost some fitness.
Sure.
You know, so if you're going to do another one and you want to actually do well, you're going to need to give yourself another 4 to 6 weeks at least to really try to gain back some of the fitness that you lost and get ready for the race. I mean, you can do another Ironman in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but there's a 50-50 chance that you're either going to have an okay race or it's going to be just a complete disaster.
Right.
Personally, I think it's best to really plan it out.
Sure.
You know, let's say somebody's trying to qualify for Kona, and so maybe they're going to have to do, if they think they have a chance, but they're not sure, they might have to plan 2 Ironmans to get ready. Have the first one be ready to try and qualify them for Ironman this year. So they do an Ironman in March, April, May, June, something like that. And if they don't qualify for this year, have them plan to have their second Ironman be in September, October, November, so that it qualifies them for the following year. Because if they back them up and that second one gets them qualified, let's say they did one in May and they did another one in June or early July, all of a sudden they've done 2 Ironmans and then they're qualified for Kona. Well, they've already done 2 Ironmans and they're going to do a third one in October for the big show. It can be too much.
Yeah.
So
and I think it goes back to the longevity talk that you were talking about, right? Like you want your athletes to be in this for the long haul, and sometimes that's not the most efficient way to do it. So when in doubt, think longer. I think you don't want to live to fight another day. Let those athletes live to fight another day, so to speak. So I think that can.
And Kate and I, we want to be coaching you for years. We don't want to burn you out right now.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Perfect. Well, those are all the questions we got through. First off, that was a lot of questions. So coaches, thank you for being participative there and active with that. I know Mark and Kate definitely appreciate that as well. So getting as much knowledge to you guys as possible is what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring more value back to IMU, Earl, Gina, and myself. So we continue to do that with things like this and adding that app. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for jumping on today. Then mostly thank you to Kate and thank you to Mark for taking time out of y'all's busy schedule to sit down and talk through this and go through some training plans. So I hope you guys enjoyed it and got some learning out of it as well. So thank you to both of you as well for joining and taking some time out today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
With that, we will wrap it up for the coaches table for January. We hope you guys got a lot out of this, and we will see you all in February for our next show. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.